Hello everyone, and welcome to Introduction to Mixed Media. We are going to create a piece together where the main word is enough, because you are so much more than enough. So to get started, I chose a color palette, and something that was useful in doing that is in the past I have created color recipe cards. And this tells me for this color that I used cobalt blue and Naples yellow and then added some white. I just discovered a new tool called Coolors, COOLORS.co, where you can input a color and it brings up a bunch of different color palettes. It's kind of addicting and very fun. So for this particular project, I picked some colors that I want to use. And I want to use this kind of grayish blue right here, except that I don't have grayish blue. So I went back to my recipe card and I mixed some and put it in this Rubbermaid container. And I put a little bit of the paint on top of the container so that I know what color it is the next time I want to use it. All right, so, excuse me, I am using for this project just about all Liquitex Basics acrylics paint, always acrylic paint. I don't use oil paint because I don't have the space to make such a mess. This one is Brilliant Purple. I already mentioned that I used Naples yellow in making that gray blue. I'm going to use some natural gray, at least I think I am. I might change my mind along the way. I've got out my Titan Buff, and this one is an Amsterdam acrylic, which is about the same quality as Liquitex Basics. I'll definitely use some more cobalt blue. My favorite color is Quinacridone Magenta. I've got sky blue, and of course I've got some white ready to go. One of the things that I put on the list of supplies is wax paper. I use this to not make a mess around the edges of whatever I'm working on, but I also use it as a color palette. So I'm going to go ahead and put some of my paint on the wax paper. I've got that gray blue all ready to go, so I don't need to put that out. And what's a little bit different about this project is initially I am going to paint with a palette knife rather than a paintbrush. This stuff, Golden Satin Glazing Liquid, I've used it so much you can't even really read it, is wonderful because it slows down how fast acrylic paint dries, but it's also wonderful for blending paint together, and it's even helpful if you make a mistake, you can put some on a rag and wipe the mistake away. So I am going to add some of that to my paints that I've got on the palette so that they will blend better and last longer. Pull out another one. I don't have to keep wiping off my palette knives. And then I'm going to just randomly put some paint down on the board that's already been gessoed. You can do whatever feels right to you here. There's no magic sauce, there's no scientific ingredients behind this. I'm just going with what feels right to my gut and what feels fun and what looks fun. And I'm going to add some of this magenta, and when those two mix together, there's this beautiful purple that happens. But then there's some magenta down at the bottom that doesn't get mixed in with the blue. Now, if I don't want these paints to mix together, I would have to wait for the blue to dry, or I can use a hair dryer or a heat tool. I bought a heat tool because I took classes and saw other artists using them, and I actually think my hair dryer works better. So I use a hair dryer to dry off paint when I'm being impatient. I'm gonna pause this here and do just that. The next paint I'm going to put on is the blue gray that I mixed. The reason I like painting with a color palette is because it doesn't look like perfect brush strokes. And you see some of that wasn't dry, but that's okay. I'm good with that. I like how it looks. I like the texture that I can get. Now watch, if I bounce the palette knife up and down, it makes for an interesting texture. You can just kind of scoop it on there and see what happens. You can draw with it, make interesting lines. Yeah, I do like how it's blending with that magenta. I might add some more magenta. Grab a little bit more magenta and see what happens. The reason I love mixed media art is because anything goes, really. Anything that you feel like adding to a piece, anything you feel like subtracting from a piece, you certainly don't have to follow my directions. I'm just here to give you ideas and help your creativity and inspiration start to flow. See how that, I really like that. And I had no idea when I started this process and started this video that I would be mixing the magenta and the grayish bluish color together, but it's a very interesting combination. Here's a challenge for you. Learn how to spell quinacridone without looking it up. That's a fun word, and it has a meaning. I had to look it up, see what does it mean, because there are other paints that are called quinacridone also. And it's a paint, and take a drink of water. I got a horse in my throat. I guess that would be pretty big to have a horse in my throat. I put a frog in my throat. Quinacridone means that it's more vibrant of a color. Okay, something else that I could try is to put a little bit of my satin glazing liquid on a rag and just kind of brush it around and see what happens. You can paint with a rag just like you can paint with a palette knife and get interesting texture with it. Now I think I've got a little bit too much red in there, so I'm going to add some more of the blue-gray in the middle. And then if I kind of scrape back, that cobalt blue is underneath. And at this point, I will keep playing with this until I get what I like. So I'm going to pause the camera here and load some other colors on my palette and dry this one. At this point, You could add some more paint with a stencil or a stamp or add collage, but since this is an introductory class, I am just going to continue to add some paint. What I like to do is, this is Titan Buff, it's like off-white. I like to add some Titan Buff and kind of scrape it on and then scrape some off so that it looks weathered. And I think particularly on this board, it looks really good. Some people like to listen to music while they're creating. I like to listen to art podcasts. Right now I'm listening to The Dryer. Alright, so I have that kind of coated all over, and I'm going to scrape some off here and there. I can scrape it in different directions. See the effects that I get. Remember, I never put purple down, but that magenta and blue created a purple. And keep in mind, this is just the background, so don't get caught up in making it look perfect. I think I might go back to my rag and scrape a little bit more off. I don't want to get too carried away with too much paint because it'll eventually turn to gray or brown if I do. Unless I really thoroughly dry it in between every coat. Alright, I'm going to pause the video here and work on this a little bit more, and when I come back, if I've done anything outrageous, I'll let you know.